There's some things that even scare Skeletor. Here's a look at the Mattel Master Universe Origins, Scareglow, the evil ghost of Skeletor. A walking horror from a different dimension, Scareglow radiates fear and terrifies his victims. Before we get down to Scareglow Town, and I suspect this review is going to get real scary, real hairy scary, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figure actually stands. Real hairy scary. What does that even mean? Taking the tape measure right to the very top of his head. Let's go with it. The figure stands 6.043 inches in height, or a normal person probably would have just said 6 inches and moved on from that. We can switch that over to centimeters, revealing that Scareglow is 15.3 centimeters tall. While you all scarf down your snacks, kindly catered today by Jimmy's Hoagies. You've never had a good hoagie until you've had Jimmy's Hoagies. Let's bring in some size comparisons and show you what he looks like next to other Masters of the Universe Origins figures, starting first with Skeletor. He's evil, and apparently Scareglow is also the ghost of him. I really had no idea. Unless he's from another dimension, and maybe in that dimension, Skeletor has been deceased, croaked, kicked the bucket, and Scareglow is the after effect of that, I guess. We can also bring in some other comparisons. Let's bring in the recently looked at Faker. We can also bring in the recently looked at Evil Lyn. And we can also bring in the recently looked at Merman. Now, this is the Lop Merman, and actually, just some course correction from that review I actually did of Merman, where it said he was from the 2000 series. Actually, Lord of Power was the original name for the Masters of the Universe line. Deemed a little too religious, they ended up scratching the name of LOP, Lord of Power, and changing it to Masters of the Universe. Although the original advertisements of what those figures were going to look like featured, as you can see, interrupting the frame with my hand here, this specific look of Merman. Even though it's what Merman would look like in the 2000 series, it's actually more so based on the original Lord of Power, which Beastman also, from a Lord of Power standpoint, I think is more closer to being a yellow color than the traditional red. Now let's resume with the rest of this review. So as you can kind of see, yes, Scareglow fits in well with all the male figures, pretty much because he's using the exact same body parts. And of course he also fits in well with Evil Lyn, though you can clearly see they're not sharing any bit of the body parts between the two figures here. Checking out now the accessories to come included with Scareglow. Starting first, he comes included with a comic. Good news I'm going to share with you across the land. This is actually North American packaging. Specifically, I picked up the Scareglow and another figure that we will be looking at in an upcoming review. I won't tell you what it is, but it may have something to do with the two characters that you see on either side of He-Man's arms. Anyways, at least in these cases, I had picked these ones up online over on eBay, paid a little bit more for them, but the resulting of that is, as you see inside the pages here, we can finally read. Fantastic. It still is a very short read. Doesn't tell us too much, but you can see Skeletor eventually changes and turns into Orko here. One thing I do want to draw your attention to, even though they're advertising Scareglow as being the ghost of Skeletor, you'll see that down below here, right as I move down to the bottom page, it says, "Fool, you let him escape, you tell Skeletor." Even though he is the ghost of Skeletor, apparently he doesn't know whose body he used to be. Anyways, on the back, advertising the other figures that we've had a look at, He-Man and Skeletor started off this journey, so we're not going to really be looking at them again. Many Faces we've looked at, Trapjaw we've looked at, which leaves only one character up in the top corner. Again, I won't tell you who the upcoming character review is going to be based around. I'm just going to leave it to you, and you guys are all smart. You'll figure it out for yourself. Let's move that comic to the side and look at the other thing he comes included with. A rather sharp-looking, it looks like a spear. I guess it would be more so a staff because he's not going to be hauling it across the skies. But it does have a really interesting-looking blade to it. This is all done in a very bright green plastic. It can fit into only really technically one of his hands because the other hand has got that grabbing hand. Completely flat and really otherwise rather useless for him to be holding accessories. So choosing which hand it's going to be fitting inside of, it's a pretty short list to choose from. But you can see there he is holding the staff in his hand. I guess it would be closer to a staff than a spear. He's not going to throw across Eternia. Go ahead and remove this. We'll go ahead and just put this to the side for the time being. And getting a closer look at Scareglow, a figure I was really excited to pick up and yet had such the tough time trying to actually track this guy down. I won't get into the long, boring story end of it, but let's just say I tried ordering it from several online sites. One site sold out. The other site had it, bought it, and then they back ordered pretty much the entire wave. So I had to cancel it and eventually just picked it up over on eBay. Paid a little bit more for it, but I'm so glad that I did. Well, not so glad that I spent the extra money, but I'm glad to at least finally have Scareglow in my possession. As we can move this figure over just for 1 second, it's almost like I'm freeing up a little bit of space. Where's this going? Well, I can bring in Skeletor to show you that not only is apparently he the ghost of Skeletor, but he shares all the same body. Short of the fact that Scareglow has a cape, a rather nice-looking Mysterio-like cape, and short of the fact that Skeletor does have the armor torso piece there, other than that, I mean, it's the exact same figures. Right down to the same monster-sized style boots, and even the same hands as well. Although most of these hands pretty much find the same reappearances with every single figure release, for the most part. The head sculpts, you could buy into the idea that they could be the same body. I mean, of course, Scareglow does have a skull. It's not quite the same head sculpt. Skeletor's still got that look of shock on his face. What has Skeletor seen? Let's ask ourselves that question. Again, not too surprising to see that they're using the same body parts. I mean, that's really the MO when it comes to Masters of the Universe Origins figures, that they're going to be using the same body parts, torsos, arms, and all that. And similar to the other figures that we've also had a look at, somebody's asking themselves, wait a minute, is he starting to break the figure? No, actually, you can remove the parts and you can swap it out with other figures. The thing I am a little bit more worried about when it comes to doing this, not that I would be doing it anyways, is the type of plastic that they're using. This is all glow-in-the-dark plastic. For the pegs, at least, they're seeming to be using a darker version of that same plastic. I hope that's not going to start cracking over time. Let's snap that back into place. Probably was really bad timing for me to say crack and then pop that back into place. But as you can see, Scareglow does have a rather snazzy-looking cape. Something that would even make Mysterio jealous. No, not Rey Mysterio, the Mysterio villain from Spider-Man comics. You'll notice that they've used plastic instead of using fabric. Initially, I was sort of, I don't know, not knowing if I really liked the concept of using fabric, or not using plastic instead of fabric. But you know, the fact that it's pretty soft, it does have some nice texturing done to it, and it keeps its shape, which is something that fabric capes really wouldn't be able to pull off. It doesn't really bother me at all that he has a plastic cape. I mean, it may cause a little bit more problems if, say, for example, you want to have him, oh, that's not a sound you really want to be hearing, but if you want to have him, like, sitting in a vehicle, then, yes, the cape's probably going to get a little bit in the way. At least it is, like I said, a softer plastic, and it does have some really nice texturing done to it. Getting a closer look at his head sculpt, though I know we already did a little bit of that. Most, if not all of this, is using that glow-in-the-dark plastic. I would feel like I would be missing an opportunity as a reviewer to not point out the fact that he does glow, which I will show you guys in a second. So basically, like, all of this is that glow-in-the-dark plastic. I will say, though, they have done a nice job of painting in the things that you would expect to see on a Scareglow if you had the original vintage toy. There are a few little places, like the black, for example, have little speckles around it where it's not the sharpest of lines, but for the most part, it does pull off a rather effective look at the vintage Scareglow. There's nothing really, unfortunately, on the back of him. You can basically see it's very blank-looking plastic, unfortunately. I'm hoping all the while I've been talking here and dragging out, hopefully, a little bit longer, he's been absorbing all the studio lights. Actually, I only have 3 lights. And what we will do then in one split second is we'll show you guys what this guy looks like with the lights cut off. One thing you can also do with this figure too is that if you do want to remove his cape completely, first of all, popping the head off is super simple. Super simple. You just slide the cape right off. It actually doesn't attach anywhere onto the back of his torso with a big obnoxious peg. It's not the problem. You won't have that issue whatsoever. And I guess really if you wanted to decide for yourself to display Scareglow without the cape, sans le cape, you can perfectly do that as well. Obviously the character's name isn't Scare Doesn't Glow. The character is going to glow in the dark. So what we are going to do with a little bit of help of the light on the sides, we're going to cut the lights and I'll show you what Scareglow looks like in the dark. And with a little bit of lamplight that this guy has absorbed, you can see how effective the glow-in-the-dark feature is with the lights all turned off. Even the place that would have normally not taken in the light, like for example behind the cape, still illuminates rather brightly. And with all that panel lining that we're seeing painted still in, it masks all the non-skeleton parts so that you can still see his ribcage and you can still see his things like his arms and stuff brightly standing out here in the dark. Now looking at the articulation on Scareglow, if you have collected any of the Masters of the Universe Origins figures, by now you know the things that you're expecting to see when it comes to poseability. Scareglow is basically just the carbon copy of that. Still though, we'll run through it. His head rotates back and forth on a ball peg. It's a little more limited because he's got the strap right across the collar piece of his cape. So it certainly does limit a little bit when you want to move it back and forth beyond, say, that point. And rotating the head all the way around can be a little bit more difficult, just because he's going to be hitting the sides of those collars. As for his arms can bring out at a 90-degree angle bend. It almost looks like he wants to give you a hug. Probably not a good idea. Just throwing it out there. You can see there's that plastic I mentioned just very briefly earlier into this review. It's kind of more of a translucent version of this. And I don't know, I'm hoping that down the road this isn't going to crack. I mean, sometimes it's been the case with clear plastic, but I got to think that if it's like white plastic wouldn't give you that issue. So maybe this kind of off-white colored plastic wouldn't give you the same similar issues. Anyways, the arms do move forward, they move back. You can bend at the elbow, you can rotate the arm back and forth, and you can do the same with the hand as well, back and forth. Let's bring that arm down. You can swivel the waist all the way around as well. There's his cape, all the way around. You can bring the legs out. You can bring them forward and as well back. He does have a bend at the knee that also allows the lower leg to rotate. And just at the very top of his monster feet, because the way that they're attached to the figure, you can rotate those all the way around. You can hinge the feet back and forth, and you can also ankle pivot them. These figures all, by the way, have peg holes on the undersides of their feet. I'm not sure whether I mentioned that with all the reviews, but in case, I guess, if you had a display stand, you could attach it with the figures, but these figures don't normally come with their own display stands. Scareglow is a nice-looking figure. Lives certainly well up to his name. I mean, if you're going to call him Scareglow and him not being able to glow, I'd feel a little more disappointed. But he glows rather brightly, just again, for the limited amount of time I had him in front of a lamplight. Of course, it's one of those cases, the longer you have him in front of a lamplight, the brighter he illuminates when you have the lights cut out. So, Scareglow is the ghost of Skeletor. Is that what we're doing now? Nowhere in the comic, and short of just a little blip on the front of the packaging, actually says that he's the ghost of Skeletor. I always just considered Scareglow to be one of those minions that Skeletor just asks if, it's one of those ghost-related missions. It's kind of like Aquaman. If there's scarier missions that involve ghosts and stuff, hey, I'm going to call up on my phone. Does he have a phone at Snake Mountain? I'm just going to call up Scareglow and see what he's doing. But I guess in the comic, as well as the artwork featured on the back of the packaging, Scareglow seems to continue to be emerging from some sort of portal. Maybe then it's safe to assume that in that dimension where Scareglow is coming out of, he is the ghost of Skeletor. Does that mean he was always the ghost of Skeletor? Like, was he created as a ghost? Or does that mean that Skeletor at one point died, and then his ghost just continued to fight He-Man? That's kind of disturbingly scary. And interesting, I might also say. But unfortunately, the comic doesn't give any indication of any backstory of Scareglow, so we just have to kind of go with that little blip that's on the front of the packaging. He's Skeletor's ghost? Okay, I believe you. I believe you. He's Skeletor's ghost. What do you guys think of this figure? He's a really fun-looking figure. If you grew up with glow-in-the-dark toys, you generally know glow-in-the-dark sometimes sucked. I mean, let's call it what it is. You put it in front of a lamplight for hours, it seems, on end, and you turn off the lights and it lasts for all of 2 seconds. I don't really know what you guys were actually seeing on screen here, but I can tell you, in hand, Scareglow illuminated a rather bright neon green, and it seemed to stay pretty long. Of course, the longer you have it in front of your lamplight, the better. He's a nice-looking figure, and he's got an equally cool-looking spear staff weapon that, of course, he's going to be fighting Prince Adam, apparently, of all things, on the front of the packaging, or back of the packaging there, along with Clampchamp. Just a random mission. I don't know how Prince Adam and Clampchamp went off on a mission to fight, again, the Ghost of Skeletor. I want to know more about Scareglow now, and it's probably not going to happen. What do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And also, while you're down there anyways, a shameless plug perhaps for this channel. Shamelessly plugging, of course, Jimmy's Hoagies. You never found a better hoagie than Jimmy's Hoagies. Thank you for catering this event, by the way, Jimmy. If you guys are new to this channel, loving the content you're seeing, digging the fact that this guy also likes hoagies. I mean, who doesn't love a good hoagie? Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn the bell notification on. And that makes sure, yes, you're coming back to this channel because we will be looking at more Masters of the Universe Origins line. Definitely more figures coming your way, as well as a figure that's currently featured on the back of the packaging that I haven't yet looked at. His review will be coming up shortly. Ooh, I love riddles. Lots of stuff coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.